Welcome to the show for female founders and leaders, where we share helpful coaching tips and real-life stories of women who lead, build, and own their power. I'm Nicole Overcamp, and this is Becoming Powerhouse. Hello, my powerhouses. So you are in for a real treat today. I have Emma Tupper here, and she is the CEO of Moxie Media, a woman-founded political communications firm specializing in direct mail for progressive campaigns. She rose from entry level to chief executive across 15 years and now leads the firm while raising two young kiddos. For fun, she paints, she's a quilter, and a member of EO, as am I. You guys have heard so many great things about the organization. And so, Emma, welcome to the show. I'm excited to hear what you have to say today.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And so, you're a little bit unique in a sense. And I think, really unique from who we've had on the show so far is that you are not a founder, but you are a CEO. You took over after someone led the company for 25 years? Is that right?
Yeah.
So how did this happen? How did you get here? And, I think it's kind of fun to talk about too, that shift from what you thought it would be to be a CEO, right? From the employee position to like, what is it really like?
Yeah. There's so much to dive in there because it's been quite a journey to get here. It's certainly not anything that I ever planned.
Yeah.
I started my work on campaigns, fighting for issues I cared about. Now sort of call myself a reluctant entrepreneur. It's not a label that feels so comfortable all the time. And it's sort of taken a lot of effort to kind of envision what my leadership would look like and what sort of this handoff between me and my business partner, Lisa, has looked like. We're going through sort of this generational transition from Gen X to millennial leadership, which I think is really, really interesting. And a big, handoff between me and Lisa that, she's one of the most important people in my life, and she's sort of slowly backing out and I'm stepping up. And that is an interesting dance in and of itself. It's just not something that I always envisioned. But I'm so grateful to be able to stretch myself now in these ways. And I really started from the ground up at Moxie. That's sort of the lowest level of the company.
Yeah, and that's going to give you a unique leadership perspective too, I would think, right? And seeing all of the different roles, how they are, how they interact. I'd suspect that gives you a great level of respect with the team.
Yeah. I have done pretty much every job at the company. I haven't, I don't do the production work and I haven't been a graphic designer. But yeah, I used to be the grinder. I used to say yes to everything. I took on as much work as I could. And I think I'm in some ways in a position I'm in because I sort of was just trying to absorb as much and take as much on and learn as much as I could. And now the tension for me is I'm realizing I can be most impactful and effective when I actually get a little bit of space from the work and time away from the business. That slowing down and getting my energy right has been that's sort of the lesson I'm learning right now.
Mm-hmm. It's so hard. I found that myself too, because I started my company. And of course, when you start, you do all the things as well, right? All the roles, and parts of that I love. And it's so hard to not always be in the game, but work on it. And needing to remove yourself. But then I don't know if you ever feel this way, Emma, but sometimes I have this immense guilt when I'm not working in the business. And I feel sometimes almost like I have to explain myself or defend myself when I'm working on it because that work isn't as visible. And my big fear is, gosh, what if my team thinks I'm slacking, or what if they feel resentment, which is crazy because I own the company. But, I'm curious what kind of mindset shifts you've had to go through in this evolution from being the employee to now the CEO, and what that takeover has been like for you.
Yeah, I think there are two big sort of shifts for me that have happened. I took over as CEO and I was pregnant with my second kid. And so I'm sort of into my second year and I have a 6-month-old now. So that transition in my personal life has really challenged me professionally because they're just so few hours I have to be really present and focused. I have to be really choosy in what I prioritize my time. And so I'm thinking a lot about how can I make the biggest impact today? What am I going to spend the, precious few hours I have that are free to really focus on those priorities. And so it's helped me kind of prioritize
Mhm.
what I do with my time, and really start to say no to things and get stuff off of my plate, which I agree is really hard when you've done everything. It's so much easier to kind of just take it on. The other thing that I am starting to really think about is sort of related. A member of my EO chapter is a neuropsychologist, and he did this
Oh,
whole
interesting.
conversation about it was about like executive function disorders,
Mhm.
but more broadly kind of how the brain works. And he talked about this idea of like your brain's default mode, and that's when there's not like input coming in and your brain can kind of process things. And he was talking about like that's where really big creative breakthroughs happen, is when your brain can go into that default mode. It's that like cliche of like the big ideas happen in the shower when you're,
Yeah.
not really actively working on it. It sort of made me think about this idea of like, it's okay to step away. It's okay to, like, I have to give myself permission because, like you, it's like I feel this guilt. And the way I'm trying to think about it is like, I'm actually benefiting the business if I can step
Mhm.
back and take time and let my brain go into that default mode, which is
Mhm.
hard.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure your moments are very rare with two little kiddos around too, right? Like I watch that with my sister and it's like anytime she has to herself is just like this golden moment. And usually it is just that, a moment.
Yeah.
If it's not forced time away. And so, it is definitely a practice. And I think it's something that we all need to be mindful of because I've found too, like when I do have that space or for me, it's not the shower, it's like when I'm walking or moving.
Yes.
Like I get my most creative
Yeah.
ideas when it's almost like this moving meditation, right? And then all the ahas come to me. But when I'm like stuck staring at a screen, I'm like always gridlocked. But you talk a little bit about quiet leadership.
Mhm.
And I thought that was really interesting because I've actually never really heard anybody talk about that term before or use it as a term really, and being able to lead quietly and not having to be loud to be taken seriously, right? And I think a lot of women too feel like they need to be loud to be taken seriously because they're underestimated and you've had success the opposite. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience with that and some advantageous things that maybe you've learned or walked away with, and why that calm leadership has allowed you to accelerate in your position.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Moxie was founded in 1999,
Yeah.
at a time when there just weren't a lot of, we're the first woman-owned company in our industry
That
and the
is
longest running,
interesting.
most established.
Okay.
So it was sort of founded in this environment that sort of rare. And to have the longevity we've had is also incredibly rare. We're going on 27 years in the business. So I think because of that context, so much of the sort of culture of the business that I came up in was, really hard scrabble. Like we were like fighting for our seat at the table, like really, really hard. And I identified with a lot of that. And I was sort of fighting alongside Lisa, and like we were really trying to scale and grow and make bigger and bigger and bigger impacts in the world. And that felt like a really important defining purpose for us. I think what in this sort of transition, what has happened is we've sort of got to this place of like, we don't have to have a chip on our shoulder about our position in the industry. We're actually, in some ways, have made it. you
Yeah.
know, one of the most respected, businesses of our kind. I think on the flip side, also like a sense of like, we don't need to measure ourselves in a
Mhm.
negative way against other people or competitors. And so
Mhm.
really trying to reframe sort of that part of our work
Mhm.
has led to a sort of opening up. Not like we need to get our piece, but like what could be, like what could we become, what could be around the corner, and if not that, what else, as we get the no's that precede the yes. And so the transition, I think, has gone from a leadership style that was
Mhm,
definitely like really hyper competitive to one
mhm,
that is like not as focused on other people, but like what is going to be really thrilling for us as a team? Where do we want to point ourselves? I think what has resulted from that is a more quiet approach to a more calm approach to how we do this, like a sense of like there's more than enough.
mhm,
We are really good at what we do and we just need to go out there and do it. And if a door closes,
mhm.
it there's a reason behind it and like there's something else for us.
Yeah, I love that. And it's actually just, everything you said really just to me emulates a very calm confidence actually, and just knowing that you're good at what you do and focusing on the competition is a waste of time and this abundance mindset, and we actually take a lot of that ourselves, in very similar styles because I don't believe that you need to focus so much on what everyone else is doing or get angry about not gaining a client or whatnot because to your point there's so many people out there, there's enough for everyone, and it allows you to be more authentic, right, and really take on the people who you value and value you back, which feels really good, and that in itself probably allows for a much better culture when you're working with more aligned clients.
Yeah.
Emma, I'd love to know, like, what surprised you most about being a CEO?
I think, having watched Lisa's leadership,
Mhm.
which was really decisive to me, in sort of how I perceived it. I think what has been most surprising is the overwhelming sense of uncertainty that I feel
Yeah.
and, wanting to sort of having to square that with kind of what I thought leadership was.
Mhm.
And I think trying to sort of be a little bit more transparent with my team about
Yeah.
the uncertainty, and that's okay.
Mhm.
And I think that has been really surprising as I've shifted into CEO.
Yeah. You don't have to know it all, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's like, I mean, it's a lot of like, let's try it. We'll see,
Yeah.
where like, let's get data and see if that was effective. And if not, we'll do something
Yeah,
else.
I love that. And as you had a pretty short maternity leave. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you, and I mean, not that we, as CEOs and founders sometimes really get the luxury of one in the first place, but you did have one. It was short. And so what, and there's actually, I have a ton of clients, friends, similar story, right? Where, it maybe didn't go as planned. And some of them planned to take a long maternity leave and couldn't actually wait to get back.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes there's two sides to that where it's like you're almost craving that normalcy and routine and we don't talk about that either. I think sometimes, moms can be shamed for like wanting to go back to work.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to just hear your perspective a little bit in terms of the how the transition looked like, but significantly so your perspective, but then you probably have a lot of really good insight to share with other women from your experience specifically as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, so we have a 12-week maternity leave.
Mhm,
I think I extended it to 14 weeks just to get to when daycare started.
mhm.
And I think an ideal time would be 6 months because I feel finally like I'm getting some of my like brain power back. Would be like completely I mean, it would be so, so, so hard to take that time off, especially as we're heading into our busiest season. It was important to me to take the full leave to
Mhm.
model that to our team because I do think the science behind, bonding and healing, in postpartum is fairly unambiguous. And I want my team to feel like they can do it without any hesitation. I want them to take the time that they need. I was not fully off. I would take calls here or there. I did a couple of sales calls, but I really did try and kind of check out. as much as I could. And my first maternity leave was similar. I think I took about the same amount of time. You know, I launched a congressional campaign when I was on my first maternity leave. So we're quite busy. Uh,
Mhm.
but I also had Lisa around my
I was
first.
just gonna ask that
Mm,
actually, if your first maternity leave, you were full-time CEO yet or not, or this was your first one?
This was my first one. And
Okay.
so it was
Okay.
definitely more challenging in that it felt like, more responsibility.
Yeah.
Um, and sort of wanting to balance that. I did weekly calls with our chief of staff to
Mhm.
just like check in on where things were going.
Okay.
And then ended up pulling those off the calendar because they were stressing me out. And I
Mhm.
think what I realized is like there was nothing I could do to impact what was happening. And what
Mhm.
I wanted was control. And I didn't have the time or the bandwidth to really have any say or control over anything. And so it was really a lesson in me having to just let go.
Mhm.
And, I think we said to ourselves, like, if we just maintain for the next 3 months, it'll be great. Like,
Mhm.
there's not a lot that can break. If we exceed expectations, fantastic. But, we'll be in a really good position regardless. And so it took a lot of just like sort of setting up what the plan was, having a really solid leadership team that was able to execute on that plan. And they did it really flawlessly. I mean, we had a great quarter that I was away. I have two good things going for me. And one is a baby who sleeps. My youngest is like a true dream. Like she's sleeping through the night now,
Mhm.
and she was really easy temperamentally from the very beginning. So that I think is just it's like you can't predict or control for that, and
Mhm.
we just lucked out. And then I would say additionally, we have a ton of family support. So my parents just moved to Chicago from Seattle, and they're really involved with both of my daughter's lives. And that's, I think increasingly more rare for a lot of
Mhm.
young kids. And
Yeah.
so I don't know, like that's not very helpful insight, but I say that just because, like, for context, like
Yeah.
it's easy for me to say, like, do X, Y, or Z, but sort of what is underneath it is,
Mhm.
we had just like a foundation of
Mhm.
more solid foundation, I would say, that really helped me get rest and recover and be able to show up well once I needed to come back from leave.
Sure. Yeah, and what, everyone's experience is so different too, and I think, I'm not a mom, but I'd think that, to have the confidence behind it's okay to take what you need and not worry about what other people are thinking or saying so much either. And I know it's easier said than done, but
Oh,
we just put so much pressure on ourselves, and I'm curious too. It sounds like actually, your leadership team was fantastic when you took that leave, but I'd suspect it's also a good, but maybe scary and painful opportunity to find out where the cracks are, right?
totally.
Because it forces you to stress test
Yeah.
what you maybe need to tweak
Yeah.
because, if you do decide to peel back more, or not be so involved, like that's kind of a good measure stick. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, it was, and like there were definitely things where I was like, oh, that's not how I would do it, but okay. Lisa and I talk about like if it's 80% of the way that we
Yeah.
would do it, then
Yeah.
let's not stress about it,
Right.
So I think that was really helpful. The other thing is like my leadership team is all women. Most of them are mothers
Okay.
themselves, so they've kind of been through this.
Hmm.
And I think there's just a camaraderie in that, like a sense of like, we got you, like, get rest. We know what this is like,
Yeah.
and we want you to come back really ready. I think it is helpful to have people who have that shared perspective.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that's a huge difference too, just between a woman owned, woman founded. And when you have a lot of women on the team, there's just such a different level of empathy and
Yeah.
understanding,
Yeah.
and it does make a big difference. And not for nothing too. Like I actually love hiring moms because they get shit done. Like, to your point, priority management, like, you know that you are coming in, you are working on these things because you gotta go, and there is no negotiating around that. So,
Yeah.
there's such a strength too because you don't have time to mess around,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that, 100%. So, I'd love to know just a few rapid fire questions as we wrap up here, is there something that, you protect now that maybe you didn't as fiercely that is just simply not negotiable anymore?
Definitely my time. And it translates to work where it's like, I can't be on this call if it's not purposeful. I have too many other things going on to put up with it. And so I think it has helped me say no to a lot of things.
Mhm.
I also feel like I'm much more protective of my downtime in a way that's like,
Yeah.
I think I used to kind of sit and like doom scroll, like all get absorbed in the algorithm. I feel so much more protective of like, I need to put my phone away and
Yeah.
have some time. And sometimes it's not a lot of time, but to like really, really just zone out if I need to.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Just having a moment of nothing is
Yeah.
like everything.
Yeah.
So, and has your definition of success changed?
Yes, it has. And in a weird way, I think I used to feel like if I can just like get to, a time when I feel like financially independent and I
Yeah.
don't have to stress about this, like that will be fine. And I don't need to like shake things up. I just want to like have my peace and like
Mhm.
live my life. I think it's interesting having my second daughter. So much has shifted in terms of what I want my life to look like in a really positive way. Like I feel so much more ambitious. And in some ways I think it is a result of like wanting them to see that in me. I
Mhm.
want them to see that positive role model of ambition. And it's made me want more for our business and
Yeah.
for myself personally. I don't envision myself retiring early anymore in a way that I maybe
Love that.
had thought of
Mhm.
self. Maybe it won't be Moxie, but like,
Mhm.
it's opened things up for me in a
Mhm.
really amazing way.
That's really cool. And it's interesting you say that because we just heard, I'm not sure if you watched the watch party with Emma Greed when EO had her on, and she literally said,
Yeah.
having kids made me more ambitious.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool because you want to be that inspiration. And my next question, of course, you kind of answered it, but let's, see if there's anything else there. But I want to know what you hope your kids will remember most about you watching you build the company.
I mean, I definitely like, I want them to see me working hard.
Yeah.
I want them to see the resilience, like, building a company and in my business that we have to kind of start from scratch and building our book of
Yeah.
business every 2 years because political cycles happen, new people are running, people shift jobs. Sort of the ground is always moving underneath us. So we have to like
Mhm.
restart every two
Yeah.
years. It
Wild.
requires a lot of like resilience and
Yes.
trust in ourselves. And I think that that's a really important thing for them to see. I also really want them to see me joyful and doing this work with joy and not
Mhm.
cynicism and showing up as someone who is, happy at work.
Mhm.
Not like happy all the time, but like
Oh.
having a positive mindset
Mhm.
feels really important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's so important to teach like resilience and hard things is part of life and that's okay.
Mhm.
And you can hold joy in those hard moments. It's
Yeah.
not realistic to be happy all the time. And I always say like joy is a journey, and I feel like in part as long as you have that fulfillment piece, it can exist. But there's so much pressure around, I feel like, oh, you have to be happy. And it's like, well, that's how realistic is that? I don't know. I think it's kind of ridiculous. So, um, but thank you. Thank you for all you shared. I think it's so awesome what you have done, what you're doing, who you're serving, and the true mental toughness I think that you have to hold in a position like yours and the business model, and having to restart every couple of years is really quite wild, and unique. I think,
Yeah.
compared to a lot of other businesses. So, in closing, is there any message that you would like to leave for our listeners?
I think what I'm thinking a lot about right now is I think just going back to the idea of getting the brain into the default mode. Like
Yeah.
when you are an entrepreneur and you're running a business and everything feels like go, 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 sometimes the biggest impact you can make in your business is to slow down as far, like completely power off, shut all the devices, go outside on a walk, get fresh air, touch grass. And that can sometimes have the biggest impact in the business.
I love that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that and the message and you. Uh, and we will have all of your links, information, website. So everyone listening, you can check Emma out, follow her, see what she's up to. And until next time, my powerhouses, continue to be courageous.